Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation today on Sony mirrorless technology and about our lenses as well. My name is Ben Manlove. I am a Sony Pro Support representative. I normally cover the Midwest, but you know, kind of go wherever they need us to. And so we normally deal with schools, with professionals, so we're kind of used to dealing with all kinds of folks here. And just give me just a moment while we start our presentation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I believe Prisca will be monitoring the chat. And we'll just kind of go from there. If you look at the camera industry as a whole, there's two big shifts happening right now. Number one is the shift from a traditional DSLR style camera, and then the second is from a smaller sensor up into a full frame, a larger sensor camera for picture quality reasons. And that is something that Sony as a company, we really emphasize, is that full frame mirrorless camera. So we believe it gives you as content creators or creative professionals more choices and a better camera to do what you're looking to do. So when we talk about mirrorless cameras, there are a couple challenges to address. First, power consumption. Cameras do typically use more power compared to a DSLR. Second is the electronic viewfinder. While it is a great tool, a poor viewfinder design can really hamper a camera compared to a digital SLR. Having brand new lenses, a new lens lineup is required essentially for a mirrorless camera. While sometimes you can put DSLR lenses on, I think you'll see through this presentation as to why that is something that having a new lens lineup is important. And then keeping the size down. Well, we first started mirrorless emphasizing smaller size. The cameras have gotten a bit bigger to accommodate for better ergonomics, but we still want to keep the overall package size down without compromising on the camera. And then we want to so we can minimize those challenges, but then we can maximize the benefit of a mirrorless, specifically as IAF, and as you'll see now, not just the eye focusing, but also using AI to track subjects better. Completely silent shooting is a new feature that we can use. Enhanced movie capabilities, because now more folks are using these cameras for both stills and for video. And then we have 5-axis image stabilization, so image stabilization built into the camera. These are things that maybe we couldn't have done before. So if you look at the history of full-frame mirrorless, this is something we've been doing since 2013, so 7 years now. It's quite a long time. And every single year we bring out something new. Well, we keep it small, and then we add eye focusing, and then we add tracking and eye focusing. We got full HD movie when we started. Now we've got 4K. And I think you'll see even more features coming down the pike on video, new EVF, silent shooting continuous, so on and so forth. So as you can see, every year we're adding new innovations to the product. Our full-frame mirrorless lineup wasn't built overnight. It definitely took some time. And Alpha cameras, which is what we call our interchangeable lens cameras, really set the standard for performance because we've been doing it the longest. We've listened to our customers, and we've added features that people have asked for. So kind of the 5 stars, as we say, that set the standard for mirrorless performance are going to be lenses, image quality, speed, keeping the camera compact and lightweight, and battery life as well. So when we talk about image quality and speed primarily, image quality is dictated by image sensors more so than ever before. And in our lineup, we've got kind of 4 pillars where we focus that on. We have high sensitivity in our A7S line, like our current A7S II. It's 12 megapixel, but large pixels, so great low light performance. We've got high resolution cameras, so 61 megapixels in our A7R IV, which really challenges a medium format camera in a much smaller package. High speed, using what we call a stacked Cmos sensor in our A9 camera, so a really class and industry-leading speed performance out of A9. And then our all-arounder, which is our A7 Mark III camera at 24 megapixels, but back illuminated for great low light. And as you'll see, these different sensors allow us to do different things, and they really change what the camera can do more so than anything else. And we're really leading innovation on this because we are the world's largest imaging sensor manufacturer. We're able to really come up with some unique and innovative products. Okay, so like we said, we have the high sensitivity in the A7S, high resolution in the A7R, and the A9 high speed. So when we talk about really shifting the cameras from a mechanical-based system to an electronic system, that is because of that image sensor like I was talking about. So on a traditional DSLR, you know, we used to say things like, oh, we have reduced viewfinder blackout time, quieter shutter, better prediction but not tracking, because with the mirrors down, the camera has to predict. And then a bigger viewfinder. But all of these features over here on the left hit a hard wall because of mechanical limitations. When we shift to the sensor-based systems and mirrorless, this is where we can get no viewfinder blackout, a completely silent, vibration-free, high-speed shooting, and continuous tracking with AI, and then direct viewfinder readout of the final subject. And this is specifically using in our A9, which is the pinnacle of this technology, but it is across the board. You're seeing a lot of these functions. So A9, which is our high-speed product, features what we call a stacked Cmos sensor, which is kind of nerd speak for saying that it can read its sensor faster than anybody else on the market, about 20 times faster than a traditional Cmos sensor. What that lets us do is 20 frames per second with no viewfinder blackout, and I've got a video to show you the difference here in just a moment. The camera can calculate 60 times per second where your subject is moving, and then use an internal AI database to identify that subject and track it. And one of the big things is what we call an anti-distortion silent shooting. So silent shooting is a feature you're seeing more and more and more, but only A9 can do this, what we call anti-distortion, because it can read out so fast. And if you look down in the right-hand corner, it's hard to see, but there's a golfer here with a bent club or with a straight club. Now, that bent club is caused by a conventional CMOS sensor in most other camera, really any other camera except the A9 series camera, shooting silently. But because the A9 has what we call the stacked CMOS, can read out so fast, the straight line in that golfer's club stays straight. Now, if you talk about like the readout and the enables really fast autofocus, you can see at 20 frames per second, we're getting about a 99% hit rate in this example. But when we talk about blackout free shooting as well, here we can show you an example of that. So all of our cameras have EVFs that let you see the final exposure and everything, and they're very responsive, kind of what you would expect. So here's but the traditional viewfinder looks something like this, and this is the A7R III. And you see a slight blackout. This is at 10 frames per second. Every time the camera takes a picture, it has to black out. But now with A9, we talk about completely blackout-free shooting. Got to go to the next slide. Every time the camera pulses blue, it's taking an image. So that's really a unique feature, because if you can think about following the action better, that's a huge feature to have. So that cameras now, because we're able to read out and track our subject right off the imaging sensor, we're using that high speed not just for things like, that viewfinder, but also for AI and autofocus. Okay, so we're combining machine learning to identify subjects off the imaging sensor. And now we call that our real-time tracking autofocus with IAF, so the camera can track your subject's eye. We could show you how that works here. So what the camera will do, and you can see it in this video that's just about to play, it's going to use object and scene recognition and pattern and color to identify my subject and track it accurately through the frame. Now, so you can hear now the real-time tracking. So here's my subject. So I've got wide autofocus coverage on all of my cameras. You'll see she's identified here. Now the camera can see the face. It's switching to a face. And now specifically it's honing in on the eye and tracking that eye through the frame. Now the cameras, the processors are very fast, so they're able to take a lot of that data and process it very, very quickly. So you see it's doing color and pattern and subject recognition, analyzing the distance, and quickly finding the subjects and able to identify and track. It doesn't really look like that through the viewfinder. It would look pretty crazy if it did. It looks more like this final image. You can see here it's going to track that moving subject very, very well. And even on the cameras with a touch screen, they now have what they call a touch-to-track feature on some models. But all you have to do is tap your subject, and it'll follow it. And all this is to say, essentially, is that the focusing has gotten much better to make your life easier. And now we're even doing it with animals as well, in terms of that eye focusing. And let it play. You see it's identifying the cats here, dogs, wild animals as well. And it's doing the same kind of pattern and scene recognition to identify my subject and track it. Now the one thing to note is that you do have to turn this on the camera, and you have to tell it to switch between animal and human. But it is a feature there that's really there to help you by having the camera find your subject for you and then get out of the way so that you can compose, you can follow the subject for that decisive moment. Now this is a pretty messy chart, but essentially what it's showing here is that if you look at kind of our history of innovation on this, all of our cameras have started out with the IAF, and then they've added certain models as the years go on. They've added it with tracking, and then with high-speed calculation, and then animal IAF, and then now we're doing this in the movie mode as well. Okay. So another one of the big features that we talk about is lenses, right? So Sony as a lens company now, we have over 57 lenses for our E-mount, which is the largest amount of lenses available from any manufacturer for full-frame mirrorless that are native. And having native lenses is important. So we do all of our lens development in-house, from the lens element to the optical design, lens actuators, which as you see is a very important feature. It's not a really exciting feature to talk about lens actuators, but it is very important for movie functionality, for fast autofocus. But we combine that with the image sensor, processor, and viewfinder, and even the body to really get high-speed, accurate optics for your camera. So when we talk about why things like native lenses are better, because you'll see that, you know, when you look at a mirrorless camera, a lot of people say, oh, I could adapt my DSLR lenses to that camera, no problem. The problem with DSLR lenses is if you look here on the left-hand side, the motors designed for DSLR focusing were created back in the 80s, which worked really well for a film-based camera, but essentially they're rotational, okay? And that is a noisier, it's a little bit slower, it takes more battery power to push those lenses around, because essentially it's spinning an optic, and it takes a little bit of time to do that. Now with mirrorless, we've developed a new system that is a linear type, where instead of twisting the optic around, it pushes it forward and back. It's a much faster, it's a much more accurate system. Think of an analogy of, like, let's say you're on the Empire State Building and you need to go from the top to the bottom very quickly. The fastest route would be just to go straight down, right? And that would be a linear type system that we use in our cameras. A slower route would be to walk a spiral staircase down, and that's an older DSLR style actuator. We have a video to kind of show how the new lenses work. And it's got awesome audio, which I'll mute. But as you can see here, we call XD lenses. They just push the lens element forward and back, which is very, very fast. And this XD linear element is on many of our lenses in our G Master series, which is our professional series of lenses. Okay, and you kind of get the idea here. So like I said, those are on our G Master series of lenses typically, but they have smaller versions in our other lines of lenses. So while the cameras are very small, you'll see that they don't really sacrifice any functionality. All of the full-frame models have dual media slots with a joystick, AF on button, microphone and headphone jack, HDMI, and micro USB. With more of the newer models like the A9 II and the A7R IV adding wired LAN, flash sync terminal, and USB Type-C connections as well for even faster connections. And then finally, battery life. When we first launched mirrorless, the battery life was, to be quite frank, not great or terrible. I used to carry around about 8 different batteries on my A7 series when we first launched them. And now we're up to the point where with the new batteries, let's say on the A7 III, we're looking at rated 710 shots per charge, which is really a full day of shooting. And that big battery is important in those cameras because the high speed, high resolution, and the real-time processing really demands it. We do have other battery solutions as well. The cameras are compatible with external grips. Or we have this really slick quad charger here, which I can load up to 4 batteries into, and then power a camera for a long time. So if I'm, say, doing a movie shoot or a long time lapse, that is an option available. Or I can even get a USB power bank, just a straight off the shelf USB power supply, and slow the battery drain from the camera with the USB power supply as well. So E-mount, which we introduced in 2010, I want to talk about a little bit of the movie functionality. Okay, so when it was designed to strike this balance between quality and quality and size for picture, but also for movies. So that linear actuator that we talked about is key for not just stills but also video. But E-mount itself, you see, will go from full frame to that APS-C, but it shares the same mount, which lets us go from, put a full frame lens on a full frame body, but also on an APS-C body and vice versa. There's no adapters needed. You're not going to harm the cameras by going from one to the other. It's a very seamless transition. The only thing is on APS-C you might get a crop. You'll lose some resolution and that kind of thing, but in some cases there's some benefit to that. So like here's an example of an APS-C or Super 35 lens on top of the full frame body, which is the A7S. Or a full frame lens on an APS-C body, again, works just fine. And that's important to have that cross functionality because our E-mount is used on both our stills and our movie cameras as well. So some of our professional camcorders like FS5 are Super 35 based cameras, but you might have a shoot where you want to mix that with an A7S or an A7 Mark III. That's no problem. You can mix and match the lenses very easily. And the nice thing about E-mount is that it will go all the way up to our Venice series of cameras. So you could, in theory, mix and match lenses from an A7 III onto a Venice camera. So you'll see here's an example of our FS7 or FX9 series of camera and the Venice all sharing the same mount. So E-mount is really designed as a common platform, whether you're using stills or video or your hybrid shooter. So like I said, the camera actually has 56 native lenses, 19 of those are APS-C, 37 full frame. 5 of those have servos for video, but some folks will use those for stills as well. This kind of gets charts messy, showing that no matter where you start in our system, you can go to a different body easily. So you could start APS-C, you could go to professional camcorder or vice versa, or full frame. It doesn't matter where you go, you're going to have lenses to take you there. So when we talk about specific cameras, specifically in full frame, we kind of have four focus cameras right now. We have our all-arounder, the A7 III. We have the high-resolution cameras, the A7R series, the R3 and the R4. And then we have our high-speed cameras, which specifically the A9 Mark II. So the A7 III, this is our all-arounder. Like all full-frame cameras from us, it does feature 4K video, features 5-axis in-body image stabilization, so every single lens we put on this camera is image stabilized. It's 24 megapixel with a back illuminated sensor design, which means it's great in low light. It has our fast hybrid AF with 693 focus points covering 93% of the frame. So really great camera that can kind of do it all. It's kind of the jack of all trades. This camera is really popular with video shooters, travel photographers, wildlife photographers, everyday photography as well. The A7R series, R in our camera lineup, is for resolution. The R3 is a little older camera, but still in our lineup to hit a little bit better price point. It's 42 megapixel, 399 phase detection points that cover about 45% of the frame or so. Still features that 5-axis stabilizer, 10 frames per second like the A7 III, 4K HDR video, a little better reliability in the shutter, and weather sealing as well compared to the A7 III for more professional needs. Ideal for landscape photographers, travel photographers, architecture photographers, and also commercial shooters as well. And while we emphasize stills on the R series, I will say these are also excellent, excellent video cameras. Even feature films have been shot on A7R III. The A7R IV, this is our flagship high-res camera, 61 megapixels, 567 phase detection AF points with that real-time tracking feature showed earlier. 15 stops of dynamic range, also with that 4K HDR movie, but now we're adding digital audio input to the hot shoe as well, IAF during video, and we're retaining that 10 frames per second. So this is really ideal for that commercial photographer, landscape photography, travel, and architecture as well. This camera with the high resolution, we have actually seen a lot of customers who just don't want to carry around medium format will opt for an A7R IV because while it's not quite the same, it is very close in most cases. And then our flagship camera for high speed, the A9 II, this is the one featuring the 20 frames per second with zero blackout in the viewfinder. It's really a game changer on that, and can shoot completely silent with an anti-distortion shutter. This is the camera that has really revolutionized press photography because of the autofocus is so good and the silent shooting is like no other camera on the market. It really lets the journalist be very discreet, but it does still shoot 4K video with digital audio input, IAF during video. Still shoots that still has that 5-axis image stabilizer. Also now supports higher speed networking. So if you think for if you need to shoot remotes or that kind of thing, you need to put this camera on a LAN. You can do that very easily. Truly ideally for photojournalism, sports, wildlife, and wedding photographers as well. And we have to do this presentation before next week. Unfortunately, we can't talk about what's coming next week beyond the A7S it will be refreshed. So a high sensitivity model will go from the A7S Mark II to the A7S Mark III at about 7 o'clock Arizona time. So be on the lookout for that, about 10 a.m. Eastern time on July 28th. And that's what we have for the presentation. It was very quick, I understand. Do we have any questions at all? Yes.
I do. I think, am I unmuted? Yeah, okay. So, hi, Sam. Also, I'm Penny Dolan. I'm with ASU.
Mm-hmm.
And I run the commercial photography studio on the Polytechnic. So I have a couple of questions that maybe will answer some for some others. First of all, other lenses cannot be adapted for the Sony?
They can, they just don't perform as well.
Okay, so technically there could be a mount for a Nikon to that body from a Nikon lens, like a C mount adapter kind of thing, or E
Yeah.
mount adapter.
Yes, so we don't make them. However, for Nikon specifically, like you'll see a lot of adapters for Canon, because Canon is an electronic mount that's relatively easy to adapt.
Okay.
Nikon, there are plenty of adapters, and I have one personally because I used to shoot Nikon, so I've got some old lenses that I put on there. Autofocus with Nikon lenses can be a bit of a trick because Nikon's mount is more mechanical versus electronic. But you certainly can adapt them. We don't make them. We don't guarantee performance officially.
I understand that. Yeah.
But it depends on what your expectations are from them.
Well, Mike, I'm curious, can you manually focus any of your lenses?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay, because I still
Yeah.
like to do that on occasion.
Yeah. So
Um,
all of our lenses, to be clear, are what we call focus by wire. So it's going to be a little different in the feel for it. But we have some really great focusing aids. Like we can zoom in approximately 15 times on a very specific spot. And then so you can fine tune it. And then are you familiar with focus peaking at all, Penny?
At the point where it goes out, you mean?
Well, so there's a feature called focus peaking
I guess I don't know that.
that will highlight areas of highest contrast, which also tend to be what's in focus. It's a feature that we pulled in from the video side that will show, you can highlight essentially, on most cameras you can choose red, yellow, or white, and the newest cameras in blue, and it'll outline in that color what's in focus.
Okay.
So it's a really nice focusing aid for manually focusing.
So I just have two quick questions. I see Seth has one, and I don't want to monopolize, but just real quick, who makes your chip?
We do.
So you are fab. You have your own fab for your
Yes.
your CMOS. Cool.
Yes, we have.
And blah blah blah. I'm just looking at all my questions. I had so many. What is your fastest frame rate and your high speed? When you say high speed,
Mhm.
what is your
Stills or video?
video?
Okay, so currently in Alpha, our highest speed video camera is 120 frames per second in full HD.
120. Okay.
Yeah. I would need to check the exact numbers, but if you go into our professional camcorder line, it does get higher,
Okay.
up into several hundred frames per second. But I can look into that for you for specifically. Now, again, that might change next week with A7S Mark III. We don't know, but we'll see.
Okay, my last question to leave the floor for the others is, we have been a photo studio for a while. As you well know, being a photographer, you build up a kit, you build up your, everything relates, Nikon bodies, Nikon lenses, Nikon blah, 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 or Canon or whatever. Do you work with educational groups? Like Broncolor has an education plan, Nikon has it. So, okay, so I will communicate with you off this event, and maybe we can see.
Absolutely. Yep. We have a good EDU program, and I'd be happy to speak with you about that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And do we have another question? I don't know who's in chat. So Seth, you were asking, is there live or real-time output to the HDMI and USB jacks? Yes. So if you're straight out of the USB, actually, there is, you can shoot fully tethered. It's a little bit different on some of the, every camera's a little bit different on that, but like the A7R series, like the R3, R4, absolutely, the A9 will do that. The A7 III can do it as well. We actually do have an SDK as well, so if you want to write your own software, you could do that too. But live output from HDMI, a lot of folks will do that for video capture, for something from like an Atomos. You could do that too. And I hope that answers the question. Edwin, you had a question about using the A6000. A7 to photo shoots. Yes, third-party adapters. Okay, no question, but great sentiment. Yep, so good. So you are using third-party adapters for Canon lenses, which, like I said, does work, but it is certainly a little bit better to use the native glass, I'm sure you found. Okay, so I hope that answers everybody's questions. Did anyone have anything else? No? Okay. Oh, ballpark price. So the A9 Mark II is about $4,500 regular retail. The original A9 is still on the market. There's a couple changes between the two cameras. Specifically, the A9 II has faster networking and supports voice memos, more robust shutter. But the original A9, same picture, same speed, that's in the market for about $4,000. The A7R IV is about $3,500. The A7R III is close to $3,000. And the A7 III is about $2,000 or so. And that's all. And then there are EDU discounts and everything as well. But for those, I'd recommend that you speak with the retailer for sure. Okay. So like I said, that was just kind of a high-level overview. We also have online, our Alpha Universe website is a good resource if you are looking for kind of information on videos of like who's shooting our stuff and how they're using the tools and everything. That's alphauniverse.com. Definitely recommend taking a look at that if you get a few minutes. But otherwise, that's all I have if nobody has anything else. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Short and sweet, which is, I guess, suppose better than going over. But if you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. Thank you very much.